Welcome to another episode of the Speakers Gallery. Our guest today is Dennis Kuchio. Dennis Kuchio joined the Kenya Police in 1985 as a direct entry inspector. In 3 years' time, he was deployed in the special branch. The special branch of those days was the intelligence arm of the Kenya government. The police and the intelligence were basically one. The intelligence was part of the police, was called special branch. He worked the special branch up to 1995 when he resigned to join Shell Africa as a security expert and was literally responsible for all the security issues within that big multinational in the whole of the sub-Saharan Africa. Welcome, Dennis Kuchio.
Thank you.
To Speakers Gallery.
Thank you for having me.
Give us a brief rundown of your own life, where you went to school, how you ended up becoming where you went to university, and then how you chose to become a police officer, and up to where you are today.
It's a very colorful story, a very interesting story. I went to school. I attended my initial primary school and secondary school in my home district in Busia. And joined the University of Nairobi in 1979 to study botany and zoology, majoring in ecology. After I left the University of Nairobi, I was then posted to Homa Bay, my first job in the civil service as a fisheries officer, which was a purely administrative job, looking at managing fishermen, and managing the Fisheries Industry Act, putting it in place. But it was a little removed from what I had done from the university, and I felt it wasn't a good fit for me. Mm-hmm. So what I decided to do is I decided I was going to join
a more exciting
job.
Yes.
And I had a choice of going to the military, but I thought the military had a lot of people of my capacity, because having a university degree wasn't a big thing in the military then, because there were quite a number. So I decided to go to join the police. So I joined the police on the 4th of May in 1985 as a direct entry inspector, and took the initial training of 6 months at Kiganjo Police College, after which I was posted to the field.
You were taught the basic field craft and the police work, essentially, the general duty and all that.
Yes, the discipline,
yes.
And just the step change of moving from being a civilian to becoming an officer, which was a big thing. Yes. By the time I came out of training in 6 months, I was a completely different person. Even to my family, I was completely different. So then I was posted in the field, and I worked in a number of stations in Muranga, in Nyeri, in Muiga.
As an inspector?
As an inspector. By the time I was leaving, I had actually also worked as an OCS in a couple of stations. So I was very happy with my progress. And in those days, the special branch recruited from the
police.
From the police.
You're basically deployed from the police.
From the police.
So after 3 years being in the service, from 85 to 88, you were deployed in the special branch.
Exactly, and it was a process. They used to get us through a process of it was like head hunting, because they looked at certain attributes that you had. They looked at your background and how you're performing in the field, and then your talent spotted to join the intelligence. I then joined the intelligence and went for my basic training
in intelligence at the CID school in in South Sea those days.
Absolutely, as they said in South Sea,
Yes.
which was a 2-year training that took us through tradecraft and took us through the transformation of being of
An intelligence officer.
And managing a profile.
In every sense of the word.
In every sense of the word.
Yes.
So that if I was going to have a drink in the club,
Yeah.
The last thing anybody would ever know
is that you're an intelligence officer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we needed to have a cover for everything that we are doing.
Yes.
So then after those 2 months, we were sent back to the field. We started working, collecting intelligence. At that time, I worked in Nyeri.
You did it for 2 months only?
Yes, the basic
training was for 2 months.
For 2 months only.
And the subsequent training, which goes almost up to 2 years, is in the field, is it?
That's all in the field. From time to time, we come back for
refresher courses.
Yes. And there are special courses because we had a lot of training from MI5 and MI6 of the UK.
Yes.
There's a lot of cooperation. So we went through those courses as well. But most of the experience was gathered in the field, working with the people.
And at that time, the director of Special Branch was Kenyatta.
Exactly, and he's the man who made me.
Yes.
He was one hell of a man.
One heck of a man.
He really knew what this business was about. I think he was very well trained.
Very well trained right from the time. Yeah.
So I initially worked for the district in the district offices where we had the district special branch officers. Our business was to collect information, make reports, and send them out to the provincial office where the information was analyzed. And after about 6 months of working at the district, I was then promoted to take a job as an analyst. So now I was receiving reports from the district and collecting them for consumption at the headquarters.
Yes.
And I think that's probably where my profile became noticed, and I was moved to a different section of the police that was about collecting foreign intelligence.
Special branch.
In the special branch. By that time, we had transited from special branch to Directorate of Security Intelligence.
In the early 90s, I remember. That's in the 7th Parliament. That's when we.
Yes.
We worked on the act itself.
Correct.
To make you an independent body. Yeah.
So after a couple of months in this new outfit, I was then seconded to Foreign Affairs to help with the work in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And eventually I was posted to a diplomatic mission as a second secretary for another 5 years. So when I left the service, I had worked for 5 years as a second secretary and consul in a diplomatic service.
Yes.
And my leaving the service was very deliberate. I always knew that one day I want to become an independent consultant in this business. I wanted to be the creme de la creme in terms
of the field itself.
Of the field itself.
And basically,
and
where you can, your inputs can even be better appreciated.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I felt that I'd picked up enough information, enough experience as a uniformed police officer.
Knowledge, talent, everything.
As an intelligence officer. And then now I wanted to fill up the gap of corporate experience. And that's why I moved to Shell.
You joined Shell?
Yes, I joined
Shell Africa.
I joined Shell. Actually, I joined Shell initially as the security advisor for Shell in Kenya, but I rose through the ranks. I became the regional security advisor and eventually became the head of security for Africa. And I was part of the Shell security team of 12 people around the world who managed security in Shell International. Yeah.
Well, when did you leave Shell?
I left Shell in 2008, February. Actually, I left on the day that that's the year that we had a problem with it.
Post-election violence.
Exactly.
Yes,
the year that
the coalition government in place. Yes.
The year that the day that I think it was February 14th or something like that. But that's when I left because I wanted now to launch my career.
Yes. As an independent.
As an independent.
Basically, now you consult for on a contract basis.
Yes.
Tell me, when you look at, you were a graduate and you have since picked other degrees.
Yeah.
And you are literally an expert in that field. You have all that it takes, intellectual as well as operational.
Right.
Compared to the current National Intelligence Security and the old special branch, what do we have? What do we have?
I see a difference from my experience of the people that I meet. Like I mentioned before, our trade craft in those days was to be what you call the gray man. And the gray man basically is a person who can sit in a room like this with three or four other people, and you wouldn't notice him.
Yes.
He's not a big mouth.
Yes.
He doesn't stand out.
Just to appreciate that. In the 70s, when I was going through high school myself, early 70s, I had a relative also was in the special branch, was called Ali.
Yeah.
He has since passed on. Yeah. He was working as a waiter in one of the restaurants in Nairobi.
Yes.
That's basically what everybody knew him.
Yes.
But the reality of the matter is that the man was an intelligence man.
Right.
So the gray man, as you put it,
yes.
was you didn't know who was an intelligence officer, who was a special branch officer those days. You didn't have to know that person. The fact that he can hide, the camouflage can be there, yes. was the biggest asset.
Absolutely, the perfect profile was to be the gray man.
Yes.
So but also to be able to have the confidence to sit with the fairly senior people.
Yes.
Because remember that those days we had to pick our intelligence directly from people like politicians and senior businessmen and stuff like that. And so we had been taught techniques about how to do it, about how to break the ice, how to introduce yourself, but also having done enough research in the background so that when you're asked questions, you don't get stuck. For example, if you said you've got a degree in political science from the University of Nairobi, and somebody asked you who taught you a particular unit.
Absolutely.
You need to be able to
know all that.
All of
well
that.
In advance.
So we picked up a lot of information yes. and stuff like that.
Yes.
The difference between then and now is that now you can get in the intelligence service from anywhere.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, I'll give you an example. When I was doing my master's degree in criminology, I had a very good friend of mine, and we studied together, we did tutorials together, we had drinks together, and he kept on telling me one day he would like to join
the intelligence service.
The intelligence service. Yes. But he didn't get anything from me. But eventually he did actually join the intelligence service. And he found out when he got there, because through some activities we've been doing, my name came up. And one day I met him in the street and he told me, "You mean you are..."
You never told me this.
You never told me this. And I said, "Yes, and you now know because you are in the system."
Yes.
But for us, we would never, even when you joined, I wouldn't have known.
Yes.
So that's the difference. And therefore, in terms of intelligence collection and other tradecraft, I feel that there's a gap. And I feel that's why part of the information is not getting to the consumer. The other thing is at that time, we also, we had methods of collecting intelligence from the traditional methods, covert methods. But we just went, and if, for example, there was a pronouncement from the president about an issue that was sensitive, we would go and sit in a bar and listen, in a Pangani bar, and listen. Just listen and present that as raw data. You don't try to analyze.
You just
say
present it as raw data.
In the bar in which I was.
And people are going to analyze it up as they go.
It's up to them, yes. And that information went, in those days, it went up to the president directly, as far as I know. I believe that has changed.
When you look at this system right now, do you see our intelligence officers as just some fat cats, basically, who are earning better than everybody else in the country, and you know, like you really feed a cat very well, and it's not going to catch the rats and all those other rodents that are going to mess you, because it's not hungry.
Yes.
If you have to buy the food for the cats from the supermarket, it's not going to go around hunting snakes and rodents.
Right.
So basically, we have an intelligence system right now which is very prestigious in the sense that it recruits graduates, it recruits diploma holders, they have good life, they earn very well, but we have all these lapses in our own security.
Yes, I am not sure. What I know is that somehow the information is not getting to the consumers, or if it's getting the consumers, there must be a reason why they are not actually applying it.
Acting in time.
In time, because in our time, the modus operandi was that we collected information in advance about certain targets. For example, now the activities of Al-Shabaab in Northeastern province would be a major target. And we'd collect information about it. And we're very proud about it, because we always said, we are not the CID, we don't go to a scene after someone has been killed. Our method was to try and preempt everything.
So it doesn't happen.
So it doesn't happen.
It's nipped in the bud, yeah.
So the way the information is getting shared might be a problem, and once it's been shared, there must be a reason why the consumers are actually not acting on it. And one of the possibilities is that, you know, when you collect intelligence, there is a rating of the credibility of that information. So if you come and tell me tomorrow there's going to be an attack at the Lavington Mall, and I pass it on to the consumers, and there's no attack, over time, they will try to, now, I'll be discredited in a way that they will not take my information seriously. The other day you told us this and it didn't happen, and you told us this and it didn't happen. That was a different in our time, because the people we got information from were very, you got guys who had very good access.
The source, basically.
Yes, what you hear, this says if you sit in a bar, you'll hear people telling you about A1.
Yes, yes.
Basically, it means that someone who has direct access, he's actually seen it, or he was sitting in that meeting. So that when you got that information, you are sure it was correct kind of information. These days, I think that quality has probably left the service, and people kind of collect information in a very ad hoc way, and you present it, and it turns out not to be credible information, and therefore over time people lose confidence in what you have to give. I think that's probably what it is, because I have spoken to a lot of people in Inform, in the National Police Service, and they say, no, but these guys will give us information, and it's all lies. So we cannot keep on running around. So finally, it's almost like they say, let it happen, then we will deal with it. And that's why, if you listen to the stories of Westgate and Dusit and all these attacks we've had,
That is the university.
you have always been told that there was information, but it wasn't been acted upon. So I think that link, that confidence needs to be rebuilt. And so that the people who are receiving the information are sure that it's happening.
We are actually trying to sell ourselves as a country that is being faced by terrorism, because we're not dealing with these things in the manner it's supposed to be dealt with. We could have brought this to an end. In Saredo, which is outside Garissa, the information was there. They came and killed 4 young men. In Kamude, the information was there. They've slaughtered 3 teachers,
Yes.
3 upcountry teachers. So bad, so much that today all the upcountry teachers want to leave the place. Which is also another problem, because of course you can get teachers being killed in other parts of the country, 1 or 2 or 3, but the moment it happens in Northeastern province, then it's a justification to move all the teachers away from there. All that the TSC Secretary General, who, as far as I'm concerned, is a profiteer in his own right, is to shout loud and say, we'll bring back the teachers. We're telling them, you can't do that. You can seek for more security. Yeah. You see, the moment you bring that, they've won.
Yeah.
They've won.
The thing about...
And nobody talks about the follow-up. Nobody talks about getting these people and getting them to, following them on track.
Yes.
We kept on telling security machinery when I was the deputy speaker, put in Somali intelligence officers. There is no way, Dennis, you can go and mix up and live among the Somalis and get information on Al-Shabaab.
No, you can't.
This is what you call human capital, human intelligence.
Yes.
You have to send the people. Dennis, we were just talking about how we are not using our human intelligence, our human capital, in the manner we are supposed to use.
Great.
How we are not acting on this intelligence in time. How we are not following the thugs, the terrorists, on foot, for God's sake. We used to have an anti-shifter. I'm sure you remember those days.
Yes, I do.
At one time, the head of anti-shifter, it was a multi-security sectoral force. It had men from the military, from the administration police, from the GSU, and from the police, ordinary police.
Yes.
And at one time headed by the former member of parliament and former assistant minister, Adan Sugo, Major retired Adan Sugo.
Yes.
And he cleaned them out with just 30, 40, 50 officers. And he would drop them in the helicopter somewhere. If they're told they made an attack here or they were sighted here, he drops there, and they basically ambush them. And they wipe them out.
Right.
Before that, there was the anti-shifter and anti-stock theft team put together, headed by also a former assistant minister, Nur Ogle.
Yes.
Basically, the whole place became clean. We need minimum resources for that. Just a couple of Land Rovers. 1 or 2 helicopters whenever the need arises for the rapid deployment of officers to put them there. And officers who can work within that kind of an environment.
Yeah.
We are not using that. Why are we not using that?
Well, the basics actually are these. First of all, in order to approach that problem properly, we need to carry out a risk assessment, which I'm sure has been done, because when you do a security risk assessment in a situation like what we have in Northeastern Kenya, then you come up with a matrix. And the matrix will tell you which areas are fairly well protected and which ones are not, are at the highest risk. And therefore, when you begin to deploy your resources, whether it's going to be officers or equipment or stuff like that, you then deploy it in those areas in terms of numbers, in terms of sophistication and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure probably that has been done. And I'll be surprised if it has not been done. Then from the security risk assessment, from the matrix, then you begin to collect intelligence that fits into that matrix. What else, apart from the known, because we always begin from the known to the unknown, apart from what is known, what else is new? And that comes from, like you say, engaging the community, having people contacts in what we call covering the ground, to give you feedback on the developments and conditions on the ground. Now, unfortunately, I think that's where I see the problem, because over the years, because of the events, especially since 2011, a lot has happened in Northeastern province, in Northeastern Kenya, because of the attacks on the non-Muslim professionals in Northeastern Kenya. There's been a withdrawal of a lot of professionals, including teachers, nurses, construction workers, and that kind of stuff. Now, the effect of that is that we then now have a lot of schools closed in Northeastern Kenya.
Basic services not being offered.
Yes, and because a lot of those students, a lot of those schools have been closed. Some of them have been reopened. I think after 2014, about 250 schools were closed. Later they were reopened, but some of those schools, up to probably 100, are being run by a headmaster and a non-teaching staff. So the effect of it is that we do not have kids going to school.
No.
Okay, if kids are
lost opportunities, that now becomes a fertile ground for recruitment.
Absolutely, we are depriving them of the skills and the advantage that comes from schooling.
Absolutely. They have been particularly targeting institutions of higher learning, where these young people can easily be brainwashed, so that when these schools close, these young men can again be recruited into the services.
Exactly.
Al-Shabaab.
Yes.
This is a simple logic that the government is supposed to understand in a big way. Give sufficient security to the schools, for God's sake. Allow the KPR, Kenya Police Reserve, the host community itself, the locals, to also help the government in this protection. No, the government doesn't do that. So you wonder whether this is the commission and the mission itself is not by design.
So it's created a lot of a very fertile ground in terms of recruitment. Because a lot of those kids, if a kid is not going to school and is losing out on political and economic advantage,
they have lost out fully.
They have lost out.
And so many secondary schools have been closed right now in Garissa County. And primary schools. As a result of this one attack. Two attacks, one in Saredo and the other one in Kamude. And so what's going to happen to those young people? So you see what I mean? And right now, what Al-Shabaab is extending its tentacles to the province. They're now collecting taxes from the livestock owners in that place. They tell them, you've got 100 camels here, so you have to give us the taxes that we will have to, jizya, or whatever they call it. I don't know. It's not called jizya, it's called the taxes, basically.
So they are government of their own. They have actually taken over control.
They have become...
Which is what the government should
be. A parallel government, yes.
They have become a parallel government.
And they're not many. They're not many. They go in numbers of 20, 15, that's what I hear. And it's very easy to completely wipe them out. Just using the security machinery. Using the Somali, the Turkana, the Masai, the Rendile, the Boran officers to follow them on foot. Create that kind of a squad. And don't go with the Land Rovers, because they'll put IEDs. Use the helicopters effectively. Place them in the right place. Let one push them from there. The other one. It's very easy. It's very easy. The government has all that machinery and resources. You can even use drones to collect that, what they call intelligence information, to pinpoint and tell you where they are.
So there is
And drones are very cheap these days, extremely cheap these days.
they are
Very,
amateur,
very cheap.
amateur equipment now.
Yes,
so it's
yes,
not
yes,
like
yes. You can even, people use them for sports.
yes,
And individual people.
and weddings and stuff like that.
Yes.
So for me, I feel the resources have not been put in, sufficient resources, and the number of young men who are totally unoccupied in Northeastern Kenya is makes one uncomfortable when we think about
And the
it.
government doesn't help. Every time there's an attack, it's like you look for every Somali.
Yes.
You see, look at the social media right now. The policemen rounding up Somalis, making them lie on their stomachs, beating them up,
Yes.
and asking them for information. How do you go around in town here picking up people and then beating them up to ask for information?
Which is
Height of cowardice.
Which is the other problem is that then you cannot go back to those same people and get information.
No. On the contrary, they will, if you go and do that to the herdsmen, they will actually collaborate with Al-Shabaab and tell them, these are the guys. They will now become active collaboration. And if that oppression continues and reaches what do you call measures that are unsustainable anymore, then God forbid, be my guest, anything would happen. You see what I mean?
I agree.
That's exactly how Museveni went to the bush.
I agree.
To bring about a change. Museveni went to the bush because Idi Amin came to power. The Western guys were persecuted very much. The Manyankole, the Bahima, Bachiga, the Batoro. These are very peaceful people.
Yes.
And the Banyarwanda who came as refugees running away from Rwanda.
Yes.
And then the Northerners came. What's his name? Boche came and the rest of them. They did the same things to them. Finally, they took upon themselves to free Uganda of all that. So when you keep on doing that kind of things, then you are creating a situation that is fertile for internal insurgencies that are based on not on any of those things, but that are based on this basic, what do you call, human rights violations that you do on the people.
Right.
There is the enforced disappearances that nobody knows. Many families, hundreds of children have lost their parents. They don't. The fathers are gone. The mother or the stepmother of a member of parliament was found dead, 80-something years old. What, for God's sake, would that mother be responsible for? And that's being done by our officers.
Yeah.
So these are kind of things that you would think they get the impression that they are designed to fan more terrorism instead of fighting terrorism and combating it.
I agree. And by the way, I was looking at the statistics. The problem is growing.
Yes.
I was comparing 2018 and 2019. The number of incidents grew by 38%. In 2019, there was 82 terrorist incidents.
Incidents of terrorism.
Compared to 59 in
the year earlier.
Yes. So the problem is growing.
Absolutely.
And you can see some of the problem is, first of all, the policemen now have lost morale. So the few who go out there are hit by Al-Shabaab. There are certain patterns that you can see that are very clear. They're attacking schools, they're attacking communication masts and stuff like that.
Yes, they're putting in IEDs.
Yes. But the communication masks are not protected. I mean, as obvious as
the targets.
Yeah.
They're just some small watchmen who are there.
Yes, we just hear the following day that it was attacked,
yes.
And the police
Why don't we put
repulsed
our
it.
own security machinery there?
So having a plan to preempt these attacks is something that is completely missing. There have been a lot of a number of geopolitical issues that makes it the terrorist incident spike. For example, the movement of the AMISOM teams from the Ogaden, from the Gede region, has left that area very, very porous now. the problems in Jubaland after the presidential
elections.
Yes, meant that the security forces there have other things to concentrate on.
Yes, our forces and our contingents and our political formulation is such that we became partisan in internal Somali politics.
Yes.
Because we became partisan in internal Somali politics, we've lost out on basically the core mandate of our presence there. Why are we not? We are here as nationals, patriotic, worried about the security of their country, willing to assist our own state here, including people like him who have held positions, senior positions in the government. Nobody will even ask you for an opinion. What do we have to gain from this? You think there are other issues involved in this thing?
First of all, let me tell you, do you know that in 2010, the Interpol voted Garissa as the safest town in Eastern Central Africa?
There you go.
Okay? But back to your question, there is a certain suspicion between serving officers and officers who have left the service. So much so that if I were to now walk to my former office and try and give them information, it most likely be dismissed. So as much as our own active services are overwhelmed, nobody ever thinks of asking the guys out here
for
advice and to be able to work in certain capacities, because we have stayed with the situation. We understand it perfectly.
Yes.
We have lived with it for years.
Yes.
But nobody actually comes back to try and I think it's a lot about managing egos. Because I think traditionally the feeling is that if I ask someone who was formerly in the office in which I'm occupying to come and help me, it means I'm saying I do not know. That by the way, that problem is not just within the service. I think it's within the Kenyan psyche, because I'm an independent consultant. So basically, I need to get work from corporates. But you find that a security manager in a corporate who doesn't understand an area will not agree for me to go in.
Yes.
I think because of the fear that if I go in and do a good job,
I make myself irrelevant. Yes.
I'll make him irrelevant. I think that seems to be probably one of the.
But for national security, there has to be an element of patriotism that overrides all that.
Yes, and I'm sure that if you asked a few of us who are retired and sitting out here and active and able to help, whether we would go in if asked, you're going to get 100% reply yes. Nobody ever does, and we don't ask, because we know the tradition is that nobody will come back to you like in other countries where if there's a situation, they would actually call upon retired people to come in and operate. Yeah.
The economy is not doing very well in the country, and primarily because the economy is not doing that well. The tendency is that there are certain crimes that also spike up when the economy does poorly.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're an expert in these areas.
Yes.
What do we need to do? What kind of a safety net do we need to put for the people who are going to be faced with abject poverty? People who have to choose between committing a crime and staying hungry for the night.
Now, first of all, the number of policemen, the number of policemen we have cannot actually cope. We are below standard in terms of the UN recommendation of 1 policeman for 400 citizens.
Ours goes to what level? Almost 1,000, is it?
It is probably 1,000, 1,000 or 1,000 plus. But there are other ways you can use that work.
Community policing, KPR, Kenya Police Reserve, where the owners of the land or the people who can also do, yes.
Exactly. In Uganda, for example, they have got something they call the LC system, the local government system. It's very, very effective in the sense that what happens is that if I'm now living in Runda, and I want to move into Lavington, I have to come with a letter from my landlord saying, we know this guy, he's been staying with us for the last 5 years, and now he's moving. So you can be accepted by what we call the LC1 person there. So as you come in, they have some data on you. In this country, people move every night, and you do not know who your neighbor is. If you are not an outgoing person, you will not even talk to them, and so someone will live next to you for 2 years. You see him coming at midnight, and you think he works late, but this guy is a robber, and you have no idea. So community policing is a very effective and it's a very cost-effective way of trying to manage part of the problem that we've got. Instead, what we've done is we've gone the other way around. We have decided to arm as many civilians as possible.
To try and deal with that.
To try and deal with that problem.
Without any accountability.
So if you want to take my car, I'm a licensed firearms holder, I'll take out my gun and fight back.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at the average man in Kawangware or the average man in Ngong Town, they're exposed. And so Nyumba Kumi, community policing, all those things, I think are a vehicle that we should actually
Which we have never utilized. It was there in papers, there was too much hype about it, but then nothing was done.
Let me tell you,
resources were
Mheshimiwa,
yes, okay.
I am a golfer.
Yes.
So what we do is you have a swing,
yes,
and you have to finish it.
Yes.
The biggest problem in this country is that we never finish our swing. So we
swing and we don't hit the ball.
We don't hit it. We keep it there.
Yes,
so
yes,
it doesn't. So we have very, very good initiatives.
Yes.
We actually get very good initiatives, but there is no follow up, and we don't get the right expertise to actually drive the initiative.
And pool knowledge, pool information.
Exactly.
Full support from all areas.
Yes.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of information around.
I remember
here.
the late Kayseri, when he had these problems like the Garissa University attack and the rest of it, he was fairly new in the job.
Yes.
He called us.
Yeah.
He called people like me and told me, how do we deal with this?
Right.
And we gave him some suggestions. We gave him some serious suggestions.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, he took it on board.
Yes.
Quite a bit of it, he took it on board, including bringing back Swale. And we brought him back again.
Yes.
And a lot changed.
Yes.
He's been out now for a couple of years, I think. Now, at least a year and a half or 2 years, I don't know how long. And now we have taken an intelligence officer to become the regional commissioner for the former Northeastern province. Who, I don't know, I frankly do not know him and would love to talk to him, see how much advice he can take. But things have changed.
Things have changed a lot.
Yes.
Things have changed,
yes.
and new challenges.
And this collective punishment now is what is worrying us more than anybody else.
Yeah.
And the fact that the children are losing out.
Yeah.
So you constantly get the feeling that you're alienated. You're not wanted.
Right.
You get my point? You're not wanted.
Yeah.
So I remember very well sometimes back when we were kids, and there was that Northern NFD Liberation Front in Northeastern Province. And the late Tom Boyer said, you don't like Kenya, you can go back, you can go to Somalia on camelbacks. You get my point?
Very insensitive.
Very, extremely insensitive. Extremely insensitive. So much so that I remember when he died, he was killed in here. Many people celebrated in Garissa.
Yeah.
So the point I'm trying to tell you is that when you're so dismissive that you feel a certain section of the society in the country here doesn't belong here, and all you care about is other speculations that maybe there's oil in that place and the land itself and the kind of stuff that people think about, it breeds that kind of feeling that which is not good for the country. Let me be honest with you.
Which is, by the way,
very bad. So right now, every Somali gets the feeling that, look, even if we're dying, if our children are not going to school, they don't care about it. Nobody cares about us. The system doesn't care about And that basically is, which I want to really give a lot of credit to Moitov, turned it around.
Right.
He turned around that and gave the ownership and made sure that Somalis feel that they're part of this country. And that's why basically we are where we are now. And Kibaki also did a very good job on that.
Yeah.
But right now we have that problem. We have that problem. I don't know who are the people who are advising the people at the top there, but the security issues in Northeastern Province, Al-Shabaab, our own forces being in Amisom in there, we really need to look at it in a much more fundamental way so that we don't dig ourselves a hole that will be very difficult to dig ourselves out of.
It's a very significant problem, but I tell you, it still goes back to how historically we have allocated resources. When you start talking about professionals in northeastern Kenya being targeted, if you look at the root cause problem, is because resources initially was spent.
I've never been taken there.
Yes, and the resources was spent here. So the guys who are coming from the area that were resourced,
yes,
are the ones who are going in those areas. That's
yes,
why they are being found there.
Yes.
Because if resources had been spent there,
yes,
then that area, they would be having their own people.
Teachers, absolutely.
Their own professionals.
And it's primarily because of that there was a big issue between the TSC and the Minister for Education sometimes back,
Yeah.
when they said they lifted the requirement for entry into teacher training colleges to C.
Yeah.
And here we are telling them, look, those students have never seen teachers. Make an affirmative action that essentially allows this to go to C- for students from Northeastern Province.
Yes.
Madam of TSC, Macharia, said no. So the idea is that there'll be so many teachers to be recruited for Northeastern Province, and they make their own calculations. Most of them will come from Central Province, others will come from Nyanza and other areas which are that particularly endowed. So why do we care about them? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
These are jobs for our people instead of for Somalis from the region itself. That's primarily what it is.
That's the root cause.
And that's how Amina was moved from education. Among other things, there's a big feeling that Amina was moved out of education because of that.
Yeah.
The fight she had with the TSC. And here is, we were saying, I remember very well the late Professor Eshiwani, when I took a motion, affirmative action motion through quota system to Parliament, in the 7th Parliament.
Yeah.
He said, I don't care about Joint Admissions Board, but I'm going to implement this motion to the letter. He implemented it. And at that time, Kamodo, the late Kamodo, who was a minister, was saying that if we allow these things to be implemented, it's going to compromise on academic excellence in the country. Mm-hmm. Which I was very categorical. I said, you never qualified to go to East African University. You ended up in Russia yourself because you had a 3rd division. And now you're the Minister for Education in this country. And from Russia, you went to Syracuse in the US. How much did you compromise our academic excellence? Because there were people who had 1st divisions. There were people who were A levels. And you only had 3rd division, you served during at that time. But these are the kind of things people will want to use always for selfish ends.
Right.
But when Professor Eshiwani implemented that, he brought back all the P1 teachers to come and do a BEd in Kenyatta University. He broke ranks with the Joint Admissions Board. You know what happened? The best graduating student out of that was a student from Northeastern Province who had a D+ in his KCSE.
Yes.
But you see, you can't say equal opportunity, equal merit if there's no equal opportunity.
Yeah.
Somebody who has not seen a chemistry teacher for 4 years, or a biology teacher, or a physics teacher, cannot compete with somebody who has seen the best teachers in Alliance High School, Mango, and all the schools here.
Yes.
So these are the kind of things that Kenyans need to really internalize and understand that this country has got to move together. Otherwise, there will always be cracks.
It's true.
Yeah.
And that summarizes the hidden cost to the problem that we are having.
Absolutely.
With the Al-Shabaab and
Absolutely.
the problems in Northeastern Province. And my own assessment is that it's actually going to get worse. I expect a spike of terrorist incidents this year. I expect a spike of
and if it
abductions.
continues, and yes.
And in down Kenya, where everything else is equal, other crimes will go up. Muggings, house breakings, and all that. the statistics already
Burglaries,
indicate that things are going up. And because the economy is lying on its stomach, people now are just stealing to eat.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely. I wish we had more time. Yeah. Dennis, it's very fascinating talking to you on these things. You have a massive wealth of that experience. I just hope some people in the government do see you and watch this program and call on your own expertise to come and help them with the way we have to deal with our own insecurity. And the way we have to deal with the terrorists, with the insurgents and the rest of them. Yeah. Until we meet again next time. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure talking to someone like you. Viewers, we have come to the end of our show. Until the next time, have a good viewing.